Hey there, welcome back to People Jew Want to Know podcast. I have been anxiously waiting to release this episode because today's guest is a literal legend, Shai Davidai. Shai Davidai is a professor in the management division of Columbia Business School. However, you may recognize him from his viral video on the Columbia campus that was shared shortly after October 7th, where he spoke about his fear for his safety as a Jewish professor on campus, as well as his fear for all Jewish students. Since then, he has been working around the clock and has become an activist of sorts, sharing important messages of support, as well as breaking news on social media. In particular, he has shared a lot about the situation on campus at Columbia, and some of you may even know that he's under investigation now at Columbia University. On Monday, April 22nd, on the start of the Passover holiday, Shai's Columbia ID was deactivated by the administration, and he was prohibited from entering the Columbia main campus, where there was a massive rally by pro-Hamas students. So terrorist-supporting students were allowed to go in, but a Columbia Jewish professor was not. I won't get into this too much. There's a lot you can look up here online, but there are countless stories of things that have happened to Shai after October 7th. I'm telling you, I can't imagine how Shai has the patience for some of the things he's had to go through since that video of him went viral, because it is incredible how poorly Columbia has handled everything, and the lack of intellectual integrity their leadership and administration continues to demonstrate time and time again over issues supporting Jewish students. And that's my diplomatic way of putting that, so I'll leave it at that. I do want to mention some of Shai's academic work as well. His research examines people's everyday judgments of themselves, other people, and society as a whole. In particular, he studies the psychological forces that shape, distort, and bias people's perceptions of the world and their influence on people's judgments, preferences, and choices. His topics of expertise include the psychology of judgment and decision-making, economic inequality and social mobility, social comparisons, and zero-sum thinking. The irony of this is not lost on me. Shai is perfectly positioned to help people think through the insane behavior we are seeing worldwide and the animosity toward Jewish people. Shai has been published in many prestigious journals. He's a beloved professor by his students, and it's been so inspiring to see him step up into this new era of his Jewish leadership. When there is a crisis, a war, or a difficult time, some people rise to the occasion, and others hide and feel no sense of responsibility to make the situation better. I can confidently say Shai is the former. His passion for empowering the Jewish people is so evident. In this episode, we, of course, address the situation at Columbia. I also ask Shai some tough questions. Throughout all of this, it is undeniable that Shai is an inspiring individual and an incredibly eloquent speaker. I think you will love this episode, so please enjoy. Hello, Shai. Welcome to People Jew Want to Know podcast. How are you today?
I am happy to be speaking with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. It is such a huge privilege. I guess let's get right to it. Tell us about yourself. What do you do and how did you get there?
You know, for the past 6 months, I've been asked to tell about myself so many times. And honestly, how are people not sick of me by now? I think the most important thing people need to know about me or relevant things people need to know about me. I am a Jewish Israeli professor at Columbia's Business School. I have an incredible wife, shout out to Yarden Greenspan, and 2 incredible children. And since October 7th, I haven't had a good night's sleep.
Can you give us the latest update on your life and work at Columbia after the video that went viral of you on campus was released? I think the latest I've seen is that there's an investigation being done by Columbia about you. What is that process like and how do you feel?
Yeah, so in fact, today is April 19th when we're recording this. So exactly 6 months and a day ago, I spoke up on campus and I said that rape is never okay. And I said that supporting Hamas and supporting the Islamic Jihad and supporting any terrorist organization on campus is not okay. That video exploded and completely upended and changed my life. Now, when I say that, I don't want to sound too dramatic because there are people right now being held hostage in Gaza. And that's the most important thing. So keep that in mind. When I talk about my own personal difficulties, they pale in comparison to what people are going through. But ever since that video went viral, I have on the one hand, lost many, many people I thought were friends, lost many, many colleagues. Well, didn't lose them, they're still my colleagues, but that I thought had my back. I have faced the worst hate that you can get, both online, over email, in physical snail mail that people send me, anti-Semitic slurs. I've been threatened with death and everything. At the same time, I have gained an incredible community of Jewish and non-Jewish supporters who understand what this is all about and are just amazing friends that, I've known them for 6 months, but I feel like I can count on them for anything. And more important, I have been both posting on social media, but going around the country, speaking with audiences from high school students to a shul of 70 and 80-year-olds in Cincinnati, and just speaking with people, giving them clarity about what's happening on US campuses, but also giving them some hope that here are ways to fight. We fight peacefully and non-violently, but we fight. And if we do this together, we will prevail. So that's, in a nutshell, my life in the past 6 months. In terms of the investigation that's been, I don't even know how to call it. It's a baseless Dreyfus trial. But in early February, I found out by the university's Office of Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action, that they are investigating me. Now, I've never done anything wrong as a professor, maybe as an individual person, maybe, but as a professor, I've never done anything wrong. And I was surprised. And when they gave me the details of what they are investigating me for, it was all my social media feed. They gave me specific dates, this post and this post and this post. And it goes all the way back to October 18th. That video that went viral, where I say that rape is never okay, that's what I'm being investigated for. It's still an ongoing process, unlike the president of Colombia, Minouche Shafik, who talked about it in Congress, talked about me in Congress. I refused to interfere with the investigation. What she should have said is, we do not comment on ongoing investigations that concern employees. She did not. She went into details, some details that I did not know about. She defamed me and lied in Congress under oath. But I'm going to take the moral high ground, and I am still going to respect the investigation and only share details that I'm allowed to share.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like a very challenging experience, and continuing to show up to work and supporting your students, because ultimately some of your students, they have nothing to do with this. You know what I mean? You still have to show up as a professor. And it's so interesting to hear you say that, because a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Bradley Tusk, who is also a professor at Columbia. He teaches more of the older MBA students, and his point of view was completely different. He said, I don't experience any animosity. I'm on a different campus. I know that Columbia brought on some new leadership, and that leadership is going to take this issue seriously. It's like the polar opposite experience of what you're having, even though I think, like, in some sense, my opinion is Bradley's circumstance is the exception to the rule.
So first of all, I don't know Bradley, so I can't comment on any specific person. It's right. So the Columbia Business School campus is away from main campus. Our students are older, wiser, and more decent. So we haven't had any protests here on campus at Columbia Business School. We haven't had any problems. I teach negotiations. I don't talk about any of this. When students want to ask me, I tell them after class, because that's not my job. My job is to teach negotiation, and I will not mix my political activism with my duties to you, my obligation to you as a professor. Now, I understand that some people think that things are okay. Well, when you don't speak up, things are okay. When you don't show up in main campus and talk with the Jewish students who are suffering day in and day out, then things are okay. When you don't hear them talking about how their mezuzahs are being ripped off of their doors, then things are okay. When you don't go and actually see, dozens of unauthorized protests where they call for violence, they call for an intifada, where they shout Zionists off of campus, where I personally have been called a fucking Zionist pig. When you don't do all of that, then things are great. Ostriches, when they stick their head in the sand, they don't know what the weather is. That doesn't mean that the weather doesn't exist. And again,
Yeah.
this is, by the way, this is no diss on any specific individual. I'm just saying, how can we have two different realities when you do not engage with reality? Then of course you can have whatever belief you have about reality. But when you actually engage with reality and you see who the new leadership is, and I assume the new leadership that was mentioned was the COO, Cass Holloway, that was brought in. Well, I have him on record. It was recorded, and I put it on my social media. Mr. Cass Holloway, the new COO, is unable to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization.
You know what? I saw that video. You had posted it. It was a recording, so it was like a black screen with text on it. I remember you had posted it. It was maybe a couple of weeks ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And I do want to ask you, it feels a little doom and gloom because not only Colombia, but Colombia especially is like a cesspool for anti-Semitism. And it's year after year the most anti-Semitic in the U.S., considered the most anti-Semitic campus in the U.S. It's been this way since I was a student back in 2015, 2016, 2017, so on and so forth. Do you think realistically there's any way that we can unwind this? Jewish students are not breaking through, unfortunately, at these college campuses. We're not able to change the narrative across the student body. Even if we are, it's at a very small scale. We're not loud enough. It's almost like we need a better PR campaign, I guess. Do you feel any hope for our ability to resolve the situation on college campuses?
So first of all, I would say I feel hope because I must feel hope. Hope is not an option. Pessimism is not an option. It's not a viable path of action. I need hope, so I choose hope. I'm an optimist by choice, not by nature. And I also don't believe that we should be resolving or unwinding. We should be creating something new and better for everyone, Jews and non-Jews. Now, in terms of what can be done, I agree with you. If this was just, and I say just with, sarcastically, but if this was just anti-Semitism, then really we're outnumbered and there's nothing we can do. But this is not just about anti-Semitism. This is support for terrorism. There are 3 U.S. citizens being held hostage right now in Gaza, and the student mobs at Columbia are cheering on not the people that are trying to liberate them, but the people that are holding them hostage. So this is not something that should concern every Jewish American. This is something that should concern every decent American, Jewish or non-Jewish. And my hope, or what I'm trying to achieve, is to get this message out into the world. Decent, moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats, Americans who realize that it shouldn't be the norm to call death to America on US campuses. And it shouldn't be the norm to burn the American flag on US campuses. That's what I'm calling out. Now, if you ask me when is this going to end, I don't know. But I do know that every nonviolent civil rights campaign that has been in history, at least in modern history, in the last 100, 200 years, prevailed. And no one would have asked Martin Luther King, or should have asked Martin Luther King, are you hopeful? Why are you hopeful? Because it doesn't matter. He was right, and he was fighting for the right thing, so he kept going. Same thing with Mahatma Gandhi. Same thing with Nelson Mandela. And the same thing with the early Zionists who were trying to save the Jews from annihilation. So that's what we're doing here. Maybe it's on a smaller scale. I am not saying that we're not Martin Luther Kings, we're not Nelson Mandelas, but this is the civil rights movement of the Jewish people.
I do think that the rhetoric we've seen in the last couple of big protests and events that are happening at Columbia demonstrate to me that they're reaching a point of desperation because it's just getting so much more extreme. We started with resistance at any cost. Then we moved on to
resistance by any means necessary.
There we go. Resistance.
They don't care about the cost. They like the cost, right? They call them martyrs. The cost is the martyrdom, so they like that. It's by any means necessary, meaning rape, mutilation, butchering babies, kidnapping Holocaust survivors. So, yeah.
So resistance is justified. The next evolution was, we are all Hamas. Then the following evolution was death to America. Like, it's just reaching the point of lunacy to where you can tell that it's not resonating, which means they have to snowball into this extreme. But that's a good sign for us.
It's not a I don't see it as a good sign. I see it as a scary sign, right? What we're seeing now over the past 6 months is a Nazification process. That's what we're seeing. So remember, the Holocaust did not start with Auschwitz. Everybody, when they think, like, close your eyes, think of, the Holocaust, they would think about Auschwitz. Maybe they'd think about that image with the kid in the striped uniform with the Star of David holding his hands. That's not how the Holocaust started. The Holocaust started with with the brown shirts, with the Nazi newsletter, before they had the SS, before they had the SA, before they had the Blitz troops. That's how it started. And it took them 16 years, from 1923, when the first attempted putsch was, until 1939. It took them 16 years to prepare the population for the annihilation of the Jews. They had to prepare them to condition the population. What we're seeing now is that same process, just expedited. It's expedited because of social media. It's expedited because of the pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic professors that are infiltrated Columbia and Berkeley and all these other universities. And it's expedited because the administrations are not doing anything. If Columbia University cracked down on October 12th, when we had the first protest where they were already calling for an intifada and calling for the genocide of Jews, if they'd cracked down then, we would not be here. But when you take these three things, the radicalization over social media, the professors that are adding to the radicalization and pushing for the radicalization, and the administrations that don't do anything, that's what you get. You get a Nazification process. This is why I've been calling these student organizations and these mobs Hitler Youth. People say, that's not nice, don't name call. I'm not name calling, I'm calling out. I'm not saying they are like the Hitler Youth. I'm saying they are the Hitler Youth. They are the modern version, the 2024 version of the Hitler Youth. It's the same actions, it's the same MO, and it's the same ideology. The only thing that differs is that instead of waving the swastika flag, they're waving the Hamas and Houthi flag. But it's the exact same thing.
And I want to switch gears a little bit and ask about your students, because you're still teaching as we speak, and you have the semester that ended in the winter, and then a semester that's going to be wrapping up in the spring and in the summer when we release this. What is your experience continuing to teach students business as usual kind of deal? And specifically, what is your experience with Jewish students?
I love my students. I love teaching. And when I started teaching, so I wasn't teaching last semester, my previous semester, the fall semester, was the research semester. And my spring is my teaching semester. And I was worried. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if people would sign up for my classes. When I found out that I have 3 sections and all of them are full with long waiting lists, I was happy. It seems like people still want to take my classes. Not only want to, like probably really, really want to if they're filled. But I was worried. And I made sure to make it clear to everyone in my classes that I come as a professor with an obligation to teach and educate, not to indoctrinate like these Joseph Massads and Hamid Dabishis. I come to teach. And I made sure I always have in my syllabus a section that says I will not tolerate any form of prejudice and bigotry. And I mention them: racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, body shaming, xenophobia. This year, I also added antisemitism, Islamophobia, and anti-Arab sentiment, because I wanted to make clear we are at least in my class, we are a decent university. Not in other people's classes, maybe, but in my classes, we're a decent university. This is how we act. Now, all my fears were for nothing. Next week is my final classes, and it's just been an amazing semester. When I walk into class, I teach 3-hour, 15-minute sections, and I forget about the world. And I focus on my students, and I focus on the material. And I've had Jewish students and non-Jewish students. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it shouldn't matter. And I wear my Star of David when I teach. My name is Shai Davidai. I have an accent. People know I'm Israeli, but it doesn't come up because I don't bring it up. And if someone brings it up, I tell them, let's talk about it after class, when I'm no longer your professor, when the power dynamic doesn't exist, and we can talk as equals. So long as we're in class, I will not comment about what is happening outside of class.
I think that's a very sound philosophy. It sounds very reasonable. And kudos to you for knowing where to draw the line, because I can say this as a former student and speaking on behalf of my brother, who is currently a student at the University of Minnesota. Other professors do not do that. Growing up, when I went to the University of Minnesota for my undergraduate degree, I had many instances where professors would go out of their way to mention something that was happening in the news or around Israel. We had a referendum on BDS on campus every year. Certain professors inclined students to attend and to cast their vote. And it was clear that their intentions were not to take the question off of the referendum, rather to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. And so I was constantly in battles with the administration to say, this does not have merit in the classroom. This is not an appropriate discussion for my learning, for the subject matter of this class. It is irrelevant. It has no merit.
I'll tell you even more. For me, this is not because I'm Jewish or Israeli. It's because that's my teaching philosophy. When I was a graduate student, on my 5th year of graduate school, I volunteered to teach at a maximum security prison in upstate New York. And I taught a class on Introduction to Social Psychology, which is what I got my PhD in. And I don't know if you've ever been in a maximum security prison, but
no, I wouldn't last very long.
It's not a pleasant experience. And the people that go in there, that get in there, the individuals that get incarcerated, are there for various reasons. But I started my class and I told them, I don't know and I don't care what you did or didn't do. I don't care if you're guilty or innocent. I am here to teach you. I am the teacher. You're the students. I will treat all of you with respect because it does not matter. And we had an amazing semester with students engaging with the material, engaging with me, engaging with each other. After I finished teaching, at the end of the semester, out of curiosity, when I was done, I looked people up and I wanted to see what they were in for. And some of them were in for the most heinous crimes possible. You cannot even imagine. Not for even 1 second did I regret teaching them and not knowing what their crimes were. Because my view of teaching is, if you go to a hospital and you see a dying person, and that dying person asks you for a sip of water, and you know that sip of water is not going to change anything, they're going to die within minutes, it's not going to change anything. You still give them a sip of water because that's what you can do. So for me, I don't care who is my student. I don't care what they believe in. I am there to give them the education that they deserve, and everyone deserves an education. And at Columbia, the education that they are paying for.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I actually want to ask you on that topic. You do a lot of research and work around human behavior, which kind of relates to what I studied in grad school, which is behavioral science, right? Why do people do irrational things? We had Dan Ariely on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. What do you think is happening right now around human biases and human behavior, where the effects of these biases and misbeliefs seem so strong? Is it really social media? Like, social media had that much power?
So when we think about what's happening right now and try to understand it from a social psychological behavioral scientist lens, we have to understand social media is not the culprit, it's the amplifier. It takes on the human tendencies and biases that we already have, and it just 10x's them. It just amplifies them. And we can look at it from the individual level. We can look at it as on the group level. Because I've been mostly focused on student groups, and I will not comment on individual students, I want to talk about this, the group level dynamics. Why are these protests so vicious? There are many, many different reasons. One, we've known in social psychology since the 1970s about this thing called groupthink, right? When you put in a group of individuals who are maybe even moderate individuals, but they all agree on something, they will become more and more extreme because they will engage in groupthink and only convince each other. So let's say you and I and some third person are in a group, and you believe A, I believe A, and this other person believes A, but for 3 different reasons. When we all talk, now all of us have all 3 reasons. So all of a sudden, all of us are becoming more extreme. So that's one thing that's happening, groupthink. The other thing that's happening is this problem of anonymity, lack of consequences, right? It happens in social media, but it also happens on the ground. Again, since the 1970s, we have known that people behave very differently when their faces are exposed versus when their faces are covered. People behave much differently when they are alone versus in a mob. Think about how very normal, decent individuals go on riots after sport events, right? Because they feel anonymous. Well, New York State, this is where I am right now, New York State used to have an anti-mask law where you could not protest with a mask on because you are not facing the consequences of what you're doing. Over 2020, when there was, on the one hand, COVID, so a lot of danger with being exposed, and on the other hand, a very important and needed racial reckoning that needed to be protested. And I was there as well. Those laws were taken off the books. So, and they were not reinstated. So you have people covering up their faces with masks, sunglasses, keffiyehs, or all three. And all of a sudden, they have complete impunity and they face no consequences. So they become more disinhibited and they start shouting the most horrible things and egging each other on. So you got groupthink, you got anonymity. There's two more things that I would add. The third thing is authority figures. Again, something we know mostly from the 80s and early 90s in social psychology, that there are two channels of influencing individuals. There is the central and the peripheral channel. The central is the content. What I say, if am I using logic? Am I using the right terms to explain what's going on? The peripheral are things like emotion, things like vividness, and things like who is the speaker. And people are affected by authority figures. This is why when there's an actor playing a doctor in an ad, it says not a doctor, right? So why are they wearing a doctor's jacket to begin with? To influence us, to think they're a doctor, they know what they're saying. So these mobs that are engaging in groupthink and are anonymous, they are being led by professors in authority positions, right? When Joseph Mossad of Columbia University writes on October 8th that October 7th was awesome, when Professor Catherine Frank says that every Israeli soldier, not some, every Israeli soldier or every Israeli that served in the military is a danger on campus. When Professor Hamid Dabishi says that Zionists are the root of all evil in the world, then these students see these authority figures and they think they might be right or they must be right. So you got that working. But maybe the last thing and the most nefarious and problematic thing is what's been called the bystander effect, which is the question of why do good people stand idly by when evil happens? And what we are seeing right now on Columbia's campus is hundreds and thousands of good people from the administration and from the faculty sitting idly by and letting this happen. So again, if you're a student, if you're a radical organizer, and you are part of this mob, and on the one hand, you see professors that are indoctrinating you to think a certain way, but on the other hand, you face no resistance from seemingly good people. Many of them are my colleagues just outside of this office. Then you get this toxic cocktail, and that's what we've been seeing.
So I have a tough question for you. My answer to this question is I don't know. I've asked this question of myself and of quite a few guests. So the question came about when I interviewed somebody who was saying that they think Masada was actually really messed up, and that if every Jew thought like the Jews did on Masada, that they would rather die than live enslaved under the Roman Empire, we'd have no Jews because we'd all have killed ourselves. And it's this discussion of what's our obligation as Jewish people? Is it to fight back, to be outspoken, to engage, right? As you say, not put our heads in the sand, the ostrich with the head in the sand? Or is it to protect ourselves, right? Is it to attempt to survive and to move forward? And I know that the answer ultimately is everyone chooses for themselves. We know that, right? But your opinion, what is your opinion on this topic? Because I struggle with it myself. I'm not going to stay quiet. I'm never going to pretend I'm not Jewish. I'm never going to hide my Judaism. If someone asks them, I will never lie. I will always be outspoken because that's my character. I can't live with myself. I can't go to bed at night knowing I was too scared to face myself in that situation. But there are people who are scared, who take down their mezuzahs, who maybe wear a hat instead of a kippah because they're trying to preserve their safety. And I can understand that as well. So what's your take on this question? What's our obligation here?
So first of all, I'll say a few things before I start the answer. One is I don't judge anyone. I understand that people are scared. And I share this. Do you think I'm not scared? I'm scared. I'm really scared. Bravery is not about not being scared. It's about acting despite being scared. The other thing is, I don't think we have an obligation. I have the things that I believe in. And if people agree with me, I hope that they will pass that message on. But in no way am I the moral authority. Obligation assumes a moral authority, and I'm not the moral authority here. But here's my take. First of all, about Masada. I've always said, and I keep saying this, we're fighting back, but we're fighting peacefully and non-violently. And suicide is a violent action, even if it's targeting the self. It's a violent action. I am not the kind of person who will glorify self-immolation. I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to say anything about it. What I would do is listen to the grieving family of a person like Aaron Bushnell and say, I am so sorry. I don't think violence is the answer, not against other people and not against ourselves. But what I do think is this. When I think about what does it mean to be Jewish? Being Jewish is like a relay race. And it's a relay race that has been going on for 2,500 years, maybe 3,000 years. And it's a race that you did not choose to race in. You were born and you were told, here's the baton, start running and pass it on to your children and tell them to keep it going. And when you run a relay race, it doesn't matter how well you do. It matters how well the group does. And I have an obligation myself. I feel like I have an obligation for the team, for the group to keep going. So this is why I think that maintaining our Jewish identity, the Jewish peoplehood, is the most important thing. Some people do it religiously. Some people, like the conversos in Spain and Portugal, while outwardly they pretended they were Catholic, inwardly hiding in their basement, they kept the Jewishness going. Some people don't do it religiously, but do it ethnically, culturally, right? They make sure that whoever they marry, Jewish or non-Jewish, their household will be a Jewish household. Their kids will know that they are Jewish. Now, I'm one of the people that I don't care who you marry. I'm not like, I don't believe in the halacha of, you only have to marry so-and-so. I believe if you hold a Jewish household, not a mixed household, but a Jewish household, it doesn't matter who you are. And for me, fighting back is being Jewish in public, right? Because throughout history, we've had attempts to hide. We've hidden. Many of us tried to hide our identity during the 1930s and 1940s. That did not work because you will always be found out. The only way for you to truly hide your identity is to erase your identity and adopt a different identity. And that's not something that I am willing to do or accept. At the same time, I understand it's scary. I understand that speaking up, putting yourself out there. I walk around with this huge Magen David. I don't feel comfortable all the time. And yeah, sometimes I have the urge to tuck it underneath my shirt. But then I remind myself, this isn't just for me. This is for other Jews that I see on the subway or in the street or in the airport. And they see my Magen David and they feel emboldened. They feel strengthened. So I'm doing this not just for me, I'm doing this for other people. That's my take. I don't know if it answers your I don't know question, but I hope that it gives people a little bit of another perspective.
Dang it. I think you and I have the same viewpoint. So, because my position's always like everyone chooses how they want to, you talk about it, the relay race, right? How they want to run in the race, how they want to pass the baton. Everybody chooses. Some choose by showing up to the rallies, speaking up, posting on social media, attending events. Others choose by preserving safety in the home, doing traditions at home. But we can't judge people if they choose one way or the other. It's just what they think is best for how they pass the baton. It's just
I do to be completely honest and authentic. there is a subset of group of people that I judge.
JVP?
No, I don't even talk about them. They are not.
Set them aside. Yeah.
Jews for Hitler, that's a whole different thing. I will still fight for them because they deserve as much protection for being Jewish as everyone else.
Sure. They're still Jewish people.
I will still fight for them while they're fighting against me. But that's a different thing. But there's a small group of people, and that's people, Jewish people, that have a very, very big platform, millions and millions of followers, or they're very famous, and have gained that platform for their Jewishness. And when they don't speak up, and I don't care, but they might be doing a lot of things behind the scenes, when they don't speak up, I do judge them. Because Larry David, which I love Larry David, and I will keep watching everything that he does, but he made a career on the backs of Jews. Not speaking up, not wearing the yellow pin for the hostages now is a betrayal. Seth Rogen, Jonathan Glazer. There are people that I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes, and they might be doing amazing things behind the scenes, but your platform comes with your responsibility. And when you gained your platform on the back of being Jewish, throwing the Jews under the bus now is unacceptable. So those are the only people that I do judge.
Super fair. And as we wrap here, I have a couple more questions for you. I guess the obvious one I want to ask is, do you have any words of encouragement or advice for Jewish people listening to this episode?
The Jewish homeland's national anthem is literally called The Hope. And unlike many other national anthems, it was a Jewish song, a Jewish poem that became a Jewish song decades before the state was established. And we sang the Jewish anthem of hope, Hatikva, at the end of every Zionist meeting, starting in 1896. We sang it in ceremonies, and we sang it on the way to the gas chambers. We have prevailed, and we will prevail. The question is not whether, the question is what will be the cost? How many of us will suffer because of this rise in antisemitism and support for terrorism? So we will prevail, and we will incorporate this into our lore. And one of my new friends, Gabi Schiller, who her Instagram account is Yehudim Omrim, Jews say, she spoke at a rally and she said this beautiful thing. People like Rashid Khalidi, who's an indoctrinator here and who's heavily rumored to have been a PLO spokesperson, or Joseph Mossad, or Hamid Dabishi, all these people, what, they're going to be here for 10, 20, 30 more years? Their ideas will last, 50 years, 75 years, 1,000 years from now. Jews will be sitting for Seder. Either, observant Jews or non-observant Jews will be sitting at Seder and singing Vehi she'amda lechalotenu, and she or it that came to destroy us. So we will outlive not just these horrible individuals, but their horrible ideas. All I'm saying is, let's make this the last time we have to outlive this. Not let's prevail this wave of anti-Semitism, but let's fight it so there are no more waves of anti-Semitism in the world. And I know it sounds hokey. I know it sounds like a pie in the sky. But I want to create a world that if not my children, but my grandchildren one day will have no idea what anti-Semitism was. It will be something they read in the history books. And for that, I need everyone to be with me. I need people to show up in rallies. I need people to amplify the message on social media. I need people to speak up in their schools and in their work and on the subway and everywhere. I need people with me, because if we really put our hands and heads together, we can do this. That's my message of hope.
Amen to that. Very powerful message. Thank you. This is amazing. In light of this, how can people connect with you on social media and follow more about your work?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter or X. My name, Shai Davidai, ShaiDavidai. You can, and that's where I do most of my social advocacy, fighting against not just Columbia's administration, but anti-Semitism in academia and in the arts and everywhere that it pops up. And you can also follow me on Instagram, same handle, Shai Davidai. And that's where I try to do more Jewish positivity and not just reacting to what's happening in the world, but showing the world that we are strong and that we prevail. And if you follow me, you'll notice that I use my full name and my picture. I don't hide behind kafiyas or masks, and I don't hide behind aliases. The only thing I ask you is if you agree with something, share it, but share it especially with non-Jewish friends. Most Jews get it. We need our friends and our supporters to also get it. So take the message, and only if you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, obviously don't. But if you agree with me, take the message and put it out there so they can also see.
That's great. And last question for you. It's the one that I ask every single guest of the podcast. Who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know?
Wow. So many people. Wow. Honestly, my new friend, Daniel Ryan Spalding, he's not a Jew, but he's incredible. He's an incredible human being that gets it. And tonight he's coming over for Shabbat dinner. And I think everyone should hear his story. And his story is unrelated to Jewishness. It just relates to decency. And everyone should get to know him and follow him on social media. He does amazing things. He's a comedian, but he does it with elegance and with humor, but with a lot of zest and a fight. He fights. And I'm honored to call him a friend. So I would nominate him.
Wow, what a privilege and what a fantastic nomination. I am so excited to bring him on, and thank you so much. This has been amazing, really opened my eyes, and I know that people listening to this will feel impacted as well. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for just keeping this going. This is part of keeping the baton going in the race. You are part of it, so thank you.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Jew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Jew Want to Know.